Hey, it's great seeing you here for this one because I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing best-selling author of the Digital Self-Mastery series, Dr. Heidi Forbes Öste. We had a fantastic chat about how to become a digital nomad, all the benefits of becoming a digital nomad, and we even discussed some of the sustainability factors that you should be thinking about in 2020 and beyond. My name is Andrew. Welcome to Digital Nomad Journey, where we support digital nomads and remote workers seeking the laptop lifestyle and being location independent. Welcome. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to bringing more insightful interviews with digital nomad professionals to you as well. So make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Now enjoy. Right on, Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us today. So Dr. Heidi Forbes Öste is a behavioral scientist, best-selling author of Digital Self-Mastery series, and executive producer of the Evolving Digital Self and Global Nomad Hacks podcast. She combines 25 years experience in social strategy consulting with her scholarly research in the human relationship with technology and her personal passion for well-being, sustainability, and global citizens. She holds several advisory roles as an expert on strategic integration of digital well-being and ethics to support the transition into the digital era without losing humanity in the process. American by birth, Swedish by marriage, mom to 2 kids in launching phase at home in San Francisco Bay, Boston, Malmo, Sweden, and Béziers, southern France. I probably mispronounced those. Welcome to Digital Nomad Journey, Heidi.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here.
I've been looking forward to this interview since discovering your Global Nomad Hacks podcast because it's obviously right up my lane, and you are clearly at the leading edge, the cutting edge, when it comes to optimizing your personal life, your professional life on a remote capacity. So to start things off and to give our viewers the context here, why don't you take us back to the very beginning of your journey? What were your initial steps?
Oh gosh, which one? My journey in terms of global nomads or in terms of, well, so I first got the bug, I would have to say. Funnily enough, you're in Scotland, and I would say my first real global experience was when I was quite young. I was in middle school, and my family went on a trip to Scotland to go see our roots, and we went to go to the old family castle and all of these different things in northern Scotland and Inverness area. And I remember feeling like it was home. I remember having this sensation of this feels more home than where I'm from. And I think part of it was just, the culture was so familiar. It was something that as an expat, you often bring those pieces of your own culture with you. And so there's certain traditions that are held up when you're outside of your own country, even more so than the people that stay. And I've noticed that also during the course of my life and living in different countries. I am definitely much more of a stickler for celebrating things like the 4th of July and Midsummer. Anyway, so that was when I first got the bug, and then I ended up studying abroad in college and living in Austria and Germany, and then again in France. And it was just in Europe in different very sort of critical times. It was when the wall came down, and there was just a lot of really fascinating changes. When I did my business school degree later in Brussels, it was during the time where they were getting the European currency, and there was sort of finally the gathering of the European countries. I spent some time working on a cruise ship, which that was in my early 20s, and that really gave me a sense of working in this multinational global environment where we're all sort of trying to work together to accomplish one thing, but it was all about community and supporting each other. And I was one of the very few Americans on the ship, so that was really an amazing experience to work on a team of 450 people, and then very few of us were American. But not only that, many of us didn't speak the same language, so it was ways of finding communication without having the language skills. So there were lots of different layers that led into sort of me getting the bug that sort of extended from 18 on. I sort of never really turned back. And now I'm 50 something. And in the meantime, I'm, married a Swede, and, been raising 2 kids that are very culturally literate and feel for themselves that they are global citizens. And that's always been something that both my husband and I connected on when we first met, but also felt very strongly that we raise kids that have an appreciation for their place in the bigger world and the system that they're surrounded in, but also maintaining their roots while we do that. So helping them understand where they came from and the connection to their family and community at home. So you have both your birth family and then your chosen family, which are really the people that you meet along the way that influence who you are and over the course of your life. So that was a very long sort of, in a nutshell, that's sort of where I got my global bug. But I think in terms of global nomad hacks, actually, interestingly enough, yesterday I was interviewing somebody else that knew me in an earlier phase of my current company, To Balance You. When it first started, it was over almost 20 years ago, and it was supposed to be a social search site for professional women who were highly mobile globally to connect, to share resources. So essentially, it was like a Facebook, but specifically for globally mobile women, to help them connect to each other and to connect to resources when they were traveling for work, or they were traveling because they were expats and they were moving to a new place, or they were trailing spouse or whatever. And although I did that journey for 8 years, and it ended up being more like I was the tech advocate for talking about social technologies and the importance of that, spoke at global conferences for years on the importance of using social technologies to connect. And keep in mind, this was when, in the early phases of Facebook, people my age were not on it. It was really just college students. And so that was really a challenge, just to get people comfortable with sharing information. Now people overshare. So it was a very different dynamic then. But what was fun about the follow-up conversation I had yesterday was it's sort of, I came full circle and realized that Global Nomad Hacks for me is an extension of that original To Balance You mission of connecting people to the resources and the community that they need as they move around the world, and allowing for that fluidity and that sense of being part of something bigger than they really are. So for me, it's using a new medium for the same outcome. So it's a really exciting place to be able to have followed the technology and followed the same opportunities, but just doing it in different ways.
Fantastic. I think ultimately we're all driven by our own whys, and I have to relate to you. And in one sense, you and I have a very similar background. I too have a background in working on cruise ships. I did 3 years with Royal Caribbean as a scuba instructor, what feels like now 12 lifetimes ago. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to work on board with so many different cultural backgrounds. And it didn't come without its challenges, I noticed, but it was always celebrated. It was always celebrated. And I have to express my excitement behind that right now, because today in June 2020, we are experiencing some just awful social injustices that is all over the news. And on cruise ships, we had problems with someone from a different culture clashing with someone else, but we always found the resolution. I always saw a willingness to compromise and find a resolution. And you're talking about getting bit by the travel bug at an early age. And now in today's age, we have the technology and the resources to travel wherever we want, whenever we want, and get firsthand experience of different cultures, whether it's Scotland or India or Chile, or nothing beats being there. Nothing beats being there and being that global citizen that you've now been able to pass along to your children. So that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. No, it's been a fun journey. It's not over yet.
Exactly. Well, we're just getting started.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I came across your podcast because you are obviously passionate about optimizing working and living remotely, and you have various experts from all kinds of different backgrounds on your show. I'm curious if you yourself, or perhaps someone that you've interviewed, someone that you've connected with, do you have any mistakes, anything that you wish you could go back and correct Now, of course, we all learn from our mistakes, but is there anything that you wish you had known about living and or working remotely before you had committed to that lifestyle?
Great question. And absolutely, yes. And that's part of the reason why I love my podcast, because I get to reach out to all those people that answer those questions that I wish I had had answered when I was commencing the journey, which for me, I sort of fell into. It wasn't really an intentional, I'm going to have a global nomad lifestyle. It just sort of happened that way. It followed my passion. But even in the last 2 weeks, I've had people on the show that talk about insurance, for example, and global health insurance, which I think now there's a lot better resources. I interviewed the founder of Insured Nomads, and they're doing some really, really cool stuff that really supports nomads' ability to be covered no matter where they are and as they're moving around. Talking about finances, I had Lisa Mitchell on, who advises people on global mobility with their finances, things that you need to consider when you're moving abroad to be able to get paid, to be able to bring your money home, to be able to pay your bills, to be able to understanding what's going to happen with your credit when you move around. Will you be able to get credit in different countries? A lot of those things when you're hopping around, well, particularly if you're going to stay a place for a year or longer, or really actually if it's 6 months or longer, there's a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. Do you need to register in that country? Do you need to, and when you do, what does that mean for your own residency? And are you tax liable? And all of those different things. When I was young and I did it, I just flew by the seat of my pants. I didn't think about any of that. It was sort of, I kept my mother's home address and everything was sent there, even though I didn't live there. And I was paid, in a bank account in the US. So I sort of, in a way, snuck through the rules, because I never really stayed anywhere longer than 6 months, because even when I lived in different places, I traveled a lot. So I was constantly crossing borders. And back then you would get your passport stamped. So in a way, I was sort of under the wire, not necessarily intentionally. And I certainly wasn't making masses of money. So it wasn't really like I was, it was really a liability for anyone other than myself. But I think if you want to do it really consciously and do it right, so you don't lose money in the process and you can keep what you earn, I think it's really important to think through your finances and think through those insurance things and think through taxes, and get an expert that can help you with that understands it. Because usually people in your own country, if you go to a tax advisor in the US or in Canada, they don't necessarily know the implications of if you're working in France or in Bali, and even the Bali, the Indonesian governments are saying, hey, you're making all this money, we want to tax you on it. So it all depends on how long you stay there and all of these different things. And I think we often don't really think that through. It's more like, oh, that'd be a nice place to live and I can live there cheap. And I think as we're coming out of this quarantine COVID phase, where a lot of people are giving the opportunity to work remotely and can really choose to live anywhere they want in the globe, that's a great opportunity. But make sure you're checking all the boxes and you're being really careful about what's happening with your money and because in some governments they can just say, we'll take it. You can only bring in so much. So you may not be able to pay your rent because you can't transfer the money in that you need to get transferred, or you need to find alternative resources like TransferWise that will help you transfer larger amounts. So, really it comes down to that. To me, that's the boring stuff. But unfortunately, it is really important to keep that in mind. I mean, I certainly know the years that I worked in Brussels, I probably left a bank account there. And I don't think I ever actually closed it. Now, it probably didn't have very much money in it, but I also probably never got back my taxes. And I was paying taxes and I wasn't, I probably should have gotten a tax refund at the end of the year, but I never even declared. I mean, I was young, I was stupid, whatever. But those are things that if you actually are careful about and you take the time to do it, you won't lose those and they don't become a liability later in life.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic advice. Like you said, it's not the sexiest subject in the world, insurance or getting your finances in order, but it's not very sustainable to be a digital nomad if you don't think about these and pay some attention towards these factors, because money still makes the world go around, whether we like to want to admit it or not. And unless you're independently wealthy, and because bad things do happen. And if anything's a good example, it's COVID. It's the local pandemic where lots of insurance companies most likely had to pay out sizable sums to protect people who were probably caught in foreign lands. And then there's other people that didn't think ahead, didn't have that protection in place, and then they probably had a sizable, hefty bill at the end of it, right? So we're basically trying to say everyone should be cautious. It's worth being a global nomad for all the pros, but it does take a little bit of work ahead of time to really get yourself situated and organized so that you have that peace of mind. Because, I didn't think it would happen to me is not an excuse. It's not an excuse anymore, right?
Okay.
And yeah, you're, like you were saying, you were young and you probably made some decisions that you possibly regret now, but if someone's really doing their homework, they'll understand that it's better to have your ducks in a row before you book that one-way ticket. So you have this two amazing podcasts, and you clearly help people have a healthy relationship with technology, a healthy relationship with these different digital and virtual tools and resources for how many people live our lives. You don't even have to be a digital nomad and still need to have a healthy relationship with these digital aspects. So,
especially now, yes.
And so I was hoping you could speak to that. Is there a number one top tip, or is there a favorite resource, or what could you share with us as far as having a healthy relationship?
Well, of course, read my book. No. No, I would say a lot of it is really recognizing what your relationship with technology is. And that's really what my book is about. It's in digital self-mastery, it's really about understanding how you are engaging with technology and what are the triggers so that you can recognize when you are going into a non-productive relationship with it, where it's becoming more toxic. And sometimes, particularly right now, I think because we're having to use technology as a mediated tool for so much more than we normally would. But I think at the same time, I mean, it's a beautiful thing that we're able to do that. We're sitting here having this conversation. I'm in California, you're in Scotland. I've been on the phone all week with people from around the globe, and it's like they're next door. It really, I'm having the same conversation with somebody from Southern California. It makes absolutely no difference. That's a beautiful thing. And yet, a lot of us the conversation always ends up going into, how is this making you feel in terms of how has it changed the way that you engage with your work? How has it changed what is the difference between a mediated conversation and a conversation that is directly face-to-face? Now, one thing to keep in mind is, so I'm a non-digital native, although I love technology and I got into it quite early. I was one of those geeks that was, messing around on an Apple IIe in high school and got completely sucked in doing BASIC and Pascal programming. And, and that was it. I just kept on, I love technology from an early age, but many of my peers never had a computer until they went to work. And so after college, and they may have used a word processor in college. So our generation is, we're still trying to do things both analog and digital. And then I look at my own kids who are Gen Z, who are complete digital natives. For them, they don't feel like it, hanging out with their friends. This could, like you and I are having right now, that's the same as hanging out with their friends as physically hanging out with their friends. They're just doing a different activity, but they don't see it as a mediated interaction. So their relationship with technology is very different from ours. But that's not necessarily a generational thing. It's just where, how they've engaged with the technology. And that's not to say that we both don't have bad habits around it. What's really important is recognizing what are your habits around it. And right now we're focusing a lot on having the conversation about taking a little downtime And that's not just for you, it's for the technology itself. It needs a chance to reboot. You may notice when things start getting a little quirky, they're not really connecting properly. Probably there's an update in there that something is automatically updated, and it doesn't jive with everything else right now. So what's the best way to deal with that? And it's the same for all of us. It's like you've learned something new, but it doesn't fit with everything else that's going on. Get a good night's sleep, get some rest, go for a hike. What do you do with your devices? Turn them off. Let them fully reboot. And and at the same time, you can go off and do your walk, do your hike. So it's really good to get into a practice of, whether it's Friday night, you turn everything off, you have a technology free-ish night. You can still use what you need, but allow yourself and your technology to fully reboot. That's really, really important. And it also gives you a chance to sort of get your baseline of what you need, and to slowly add things back in as your weekend arrives. Slowly add things back in that are essential and not the other things. And so that you get that full break, and so does your technology. So it's, and for every person, it's different. So there's no one way to do it. But I do find that for people like myself that work a lot with technology, and an entrepreneur that has always had a home-based office, before COVID, our work week blended in with the weekend. Now, because so much of not only what was already my online work, but everything else has gone online, I need that break on the weekend. And I need that break because my kids are home, and they're, young adults. They're not kids anymore, but we're all online all the time. And so taking that break to have the evening that is, offline, and actually marking the time that it's evening, or marking the time that it's a weekend, and so that you actually get a sense of time passing, has been really important, because we've all been in this sort of, it's blurs day. What day is it today? It's blurs day. But if you mark the end of the day and you mark the end of the week, it's not just a technology thing, but the technology can help you actually mark those times, but you also have the opportunity to get a real break for your body and your mind. So that's my biggest recommendation right now.
And Heidi, that really resonates with me. Thank you so much for sharing that, because a couple quick things here. Recently, I did a software update on my laptop, and my computer completely lost its ability to do Bluetooth. And I think I had a mini panic attack, because I need my Bluetooth, because of I normally have my laptop on a rack, which means I need the Bluetooth keyboard, and I'll use my Bose noise canceling headset with Bluetooth as well. So it's a necessity for me. It's hard for me to work otherwise if I don't have it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you're right. I had to just give my tech a bit of a break, give it another reboot there. I had to do some fiddling around with it. And I've actually also, just another little hack that I've come across is I found myself using these blue light blocking glasses when
Yes.
I absolutely have to work late. And when I first came across this, I thought it sounded a little silly. I thought, really? Like, is this snake oil sales stuff? But no, it works. It really worked for me, because being a digital nomad, sometimes you're bringing value to a client that's in a different time zone. And I was working until 2:00 in the morning, quite often on time sensitive things. There was no, oh, it's late, I have to go to sleep now. There's none of that. So these blue light blocking glasses gave me the ability to work late and then still lay down in bed and actually fall asleep. So there's certain hack tools out there I think will help people. And then I just heard one recently. I don't know if you've come across this one. I think I saw this on Twitter, where someone has a pair of shoes inside indoor shoes. And when he puts those shoes on, he's at work. When he takes those shoes
I like
off,
that.
he's out of work.
I want to give you another little hack with your blue light blocking glasses, because they are actually, they're a great tool to have. And for global nomads and people that travel a lot, it's really good to wear those when you're on planes and in airports from all the artificial light. It'll really it's very helpful, and it'll minimize your eye strain and your jet lag. So it's not just when you're looking at screens. Any artificial light, they're really helpful for. So I tend to wear them when I travel, or when I go to trade shows. At Consumer Electronics Show, it's just like this blast of light everywhere. It's in Vegas, which is like, it's hell for me. But the blue light glasses really do help. And, they may look a little funny, but who cares? And actually
Yeah,
you can get ones that don't have the yellow, although the yellow is the most effective, I think.
if it works at the end of the day, it works. That's all I really care about at the end of the day. If I look a little silly, hey, I'm sure they're gonna say a lot far
They're gonna say,
worse
hey,
things than
he's
that.
cool. Start a new trend. Come on, Andrew.
So if you are enjoying this video, please smash that like button and hit the subscribe button to get more content like this. I am determined and committed to bringing a lot more content to new digital nomads and remote workers alike. I really enjoy networking and meeting people like yourself, Heidi, and I truly believe that this is the hashtag future of work, because not only because of safety reasons, but of resilient reasons and just quality of life reasons. I mean, I'm fortunate to say that I've bounced all over the globe in the last couple of years, and I've seen things and done things that are just incredible. That people unfortunately paint themselves with a brush and say, "Oh, I can never do that." No, you can. You can. Yeah, you just got to shift your belief system and realize that maybe it means learning a new skill set, and then you'll be able to travel the world and work remotely digitally. Heidi, I'm curious if you have any podcasts, books, events. You mentioned Vegas. And online courses. Where do you go when you need inspiration or when you're looking to master a new skill? Is there any regular podcast or something that you turn to for inspiration? Because I'm always looking for the best of the best out there.
Gosh, there's so many great podcasts out there, and it's a good question. For me, I'm very I don't follow any one podcast. I'm usually looking very specifically for content. And of course, I have my dear friends that I follow all of their podcasts, and wish there were more hours of the day so I could listen to all of the episodes, but I cherry pick a little bit. My favorite thing to listen to podcasts for is more on the side of mindfulness, because I do find that I'm one of those people, I'm not good at meditating on my own. I need sort of more of a guidance. And so I really love, Devi Adeya's got a podcast called Spiritual Entrepreneur. And she talks a lot about really great issues that have to deal with entrepreneurs, but she has the most soothing, wonderful voice that just listening to that feels like a meditation. And usually within the show, she goes through some pieces. Mindfulness, Bruce Langton's Mindfulness Mode is also really great. My son is always throwing podcasts at me, and most of them, I couldn't even tell you who they were, but they're usually pretty cool stuff. I mean, some of them, he was doing Seth Rogen for a while. I don't know. That's a little sort of too much for me. It's sort of this funny energy that I guess it rubs me the wrong way, but I like the content. It's more the energy is a little bit crazy for me. But I would say that for me, it's really about the mindfulness podcasts. And I think there's some really great ones out there. I'm trying to think of who else. Michael Neely also has a really nice one. It's called something consciousness. But Michael Neely, if you look him up, Neely, he is also, I think he has a podcast about podcasting. He was my podcasting mentor that got me launched and up and going. And just, I really love his stuff. And just a good people. But like I said, I mean, there's so many great podcasts out there. And for me, it's about searching for specific content and then finding a voice that works that I like to listen to. And so I'm not although I do subscribe to a lot of podcasts, I would say for me, I more often will look specifically for content based. But that said, there's a new podcast app called Podopolo, Podopolo. And there it's going to have, it has more interactive elements to it and a lot of fun. They've just actually taken both of my shows on there. And so we're going to have more interactive content on there. And I'm really excited because the list of the launch podcasts that they have on there, the different episodes, and just the quality of the people that they have on there, the podcasters, is really phenomenal. So I'm excited to go on there and just play around with some of the podcasts, because there are so many that it's really hard to know where to start if if you haven't done it. I mean, it's like going on to Spotify and saying, okay, who am I going to listen to today? Sometimes it's nice to have things sort of fed to you. It's like, based on what you've listened to before, this might be something that you would like. And I kind of need that, because I find that unless I'm looking for something very specifically, I need someone to just say, hey, you might like this. Like I get my kids to make Spotify lists for me. So that's sort of, the way that I work. It's like, I don't
like
have the
that.
time to search them out. So
I
I
really
don't know
like.
if that's the answer you wanted, but
No, that's fantastic, and I'll make sure to include the links below in the description and the show notes for everyone who would like to follow up on those suggestions. And I really like how you put that. Actually, I think the different algorithms out there take a lot of flack sometimes for privacy reasons and different reasons, and some of those reasons are very legit. But I personally actually look at the positive because I choose to look at the positive side. And I mean, I'm not going to see ads that I don't want to see. I'm not a bowler, for instance, so I don't want to see ads for bowling balls. I'd rather just see something that's contextualized and made unique and customized for me, right? So that's actually, whether it's the next song, the next TV show, the next movie, the next product I want to buy, I would actually very much enjoy that. So I know you have a massive trip coming up, and I was hoping you could share a little bit about the details around your trip, and then also how you plan to continue to manage your work, your life, because I know this isn't a normal trip, and I think people who are considering a long-term journey are going to be met with all kinds of resistance and excuses. And
Mhm.
I'd like to learn how you manage that, so that other people realize that there is a way to make this happen if you really want it bad enough.
Yeah. So in a way, this is sort of a dry run, because our intention is actually to move to France and be there 6 months out of the year, and then the rest of the year, because we have an executive retreat center we're setting up there. Um, so it's sort of to test the portability of our work. And this COVID has actually been a really good sort of instigator, because we've had to make everything quite portable and digital. This upcoming journey is, we are driving across the country. My husband and I are driving across the U.S. so that we can help my mother move, and then we'll be on the East Coast for almost 2 months, and then we drive back. So we're doing a different route coming back, and we because we need to bring my paddleboard, very important thing. We had to rent a truck, and thank goodness we did it right before all of the articles in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg about the popularity of motorhomes for the summer and caravans, because everybody wants to keep contained but still move around. They're desperate to get out as things start lifting. We rented a pickup truck and bought a tent that fits in the pickup truck, and a mattress that accommodates the wheel wells there. So that is our house for the next couple of weeks as we leave. And granted, we'll be able to visit friends, but we can do it at a distance, because we can stay in our house and still visit in their backyards. Now that works in the summer. We are upping our cellular so that we make sure we can use our phones as hotspots to be able to continue to work. But more importantly, what we've really done is stacked all of our work on the front end, so that, for example, I've batched all of my podcasts. As of tomorrow afternoon, I will have both of my podcasts all pre-recorded up until mid-September. So even if something happens in the meantime that we get delayed, I still have, everything is set and ready to go, and my producer will basically just take them off the Dropbox, load them up into Libsyn, which is where we host our podcasts, and everything just basically gets automatically pushed. The only thing I need to do is to, go on, reach out to the guests each week as the show goes live and say, hey, your show is live, send them the links, etc. And I could essentially have a VA do that too, but I kind of like to have that touch point with my guests. Say, hey, let's celebrate. You've gone live. You know, here's the links and the images to, you know, to help you share it. But that essentially allows us, and of course we'll be documenting our journey and sharing it as we go along. It's a little bit wacky. We're not usually road trippers. We are definitely big carbon footprint. Been trying to work on that one, bringing it down. But we, because our homes are in opposite countries across an ocean, it's very hard to sort of, you know, I mean, of course we could do a Greta Thunberg and take a boat, but I don't have that much time. And so I don't have the luxury of being a 16, 17-year-old and take an entire summer just to get from point A to point B. Sounds lovely, but at this point I don't, but I can minimize the amount of back and forth, and also make sure that wherever I am on either end, I'm being very conscientious about my footprint. So I think that's something that's really sort of been important for us as we go forward. My husband also works in sustainability, but more in food tech. And so we've been trying to really integrate that into our conversation about how do we remain connected, think about, you know, be mindful of our footprint as we move along, both as the carbon footprint, but also what kind of footprint are we leaving, you know, as we pass through spaces. Are we leaving a positive footprint? Are we leaving a positive impression? Are we leaving, I mean, I was raised, one of my ancestors is Ralph Waldo Emerson, and we were very much raised with the belief that when you visit someplace, you always leave it better off than it was when you arrived. And so whatever that is, whether it's you're staying at a house and you clean up and make sure that it's even cleaner than when you first arrived, and maybe you leave a bottle of wine for the next person that comes, whatever it is. And then, you know, whenever you arrive, you never arrive empty-handed. You always bring a gift. And that doesn't necessarily mean something that you've bought. It can be something that you've created. It can be a song. It can be a poem. It can be whatever. But that keeping those principles in mind as we move along, you build your community and your network, which is something that's really important as a nomad, is to not just pass through and take pictures and keep going and say, here I was, but to really be present in each place that you're at and acknowledge it and recognize it for its beauty, and maybe sit for some of the challenges, and for maybe finding a way to make that place a little bit better, not by making it the way you want it, but by, you know, contributing in some way. So that's sort of our path as we go across. Of course, we're hoping to see some cool things. I've driven across the country many times in my early years because I studied in Colorado and was originally from Boston. So I've done that trip in many different angles over the years, but I've never done the northern route. So we're going to go up and see Mount Rushmore, which I've never seen before. So that's our trip, and we'll be posting on Instagram and, you know, sending out some silly tweets and things as we go along, and but not so much that it keeps us from being fully present in the experience.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. I think this is actually quite appropriate considering yesterday was World Oceans Day, and I'm also very cognitive of the fact that environmental sustainability should be on our lips these days. It's no more important or less important than all the other issues that you'll see in the press and social media, and I would argue that digital nomads are far more, as a whole. I'm generalizing as I say this, but as a whole, digital nomads do have a smaller footprint. I haven't had a car in 2 years. There's no driving back and forth to work or stuck in rush hour traffic, or so yeah, I'll jump on an occasional flight, but if you were to actually step back and look at how much carbon I'm adding to the atmosphere over the course of an entire year, I can't calculate this, but I would probably argue that my carbon footprint's quite small compared to the average person's. And I actually spent last spring in Boston and Vermont, in a beautiful part of the country there, and I was really blown away by both Boston and Vermont, and had a blast. Never got to see Mount Rushmore, but that's still on my bucket list, and I'm sure I'll get to see that eventually one day. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think it's an important issue too.
Yeah, no, I think it's easy to think, oh, we'll just hop around. I mean, you can get a round the world ticket, and that's, I'm not putting that down at all. I think it's something that if you have the opportunity to do something like that, it's an amazing opportunity. And to do it for a year, whatever, go do that. But it's not something you do forever. And if you do, you do it intentionally. Why are you going to the next step? What, you know, what can you do to counteract that carbon footprint? And I think there are a lot of great opportunities, whether it's, you know, going to a place where you can plant trees and being part of that experience. And, you know, my son did a thing called woofing during part of his gap year, where he went to New Zealand and he worked on an organic farm. And you can do this thing, it's called woofing, where you basically sign up as a woofer, and they take people from the youth hostels, and basically they provide you free room and board, and you're committed to do 4 hours work on the organic farm per day. And you can go for a week, you can go for 2 weeks. It all depends on how you set it up. But they have woofers all over the world, so you can go do that, where, you know, you really get your hands dirty and you go have it's more of an offline experience. But a lot of these kids and I think it's actually not just kids. My son said he was the youngest and he was 18 when he did it. That a lot of them are digital nomads, so they're doing that and they're doing their digital thing on the side. So they have their laptops with them, and they're, you know, a lot of them are, you know, doing social media remotely or VA remotely for someone on maybe in another country. But there's still, it's an opportunity to meet other people that are interested in seeing the world and meeting other people and enjoying other cultures. So there's a lot of great opportunities where you can give back in whatever way. And there you're, you know, you're both giving back, but you're getting a roof over your head and the food in your belly while you're exploring the world. So I think it's important to look at different opportunities like that to connect with people other than just going and sitting in Bangkok in a coffee shop with a bunch of other people sitting in front of laptops.
Yeah, agreed. And not too long ago, you mentioned you were basically summing up the law of reciprocity, and I'm a firm believer in that myself. And we only live once, and why would you pass your valuable time, your one and only life, working in a cubicle for the rest of your life? And I mean, if that's what you want, great. But I think there's plenty of people out there that want more. A million years ago, when I was 21, I was a scuba instructor at a summer camp in the British Virgin Islands, and I lived on a 50-foot yacht for 3 months, and I just sailed around the islands and learned how to sail, and I taught these teenagers how to scuba dive, and it was I slept in a hammock every single night, and I all I had was my dive gear and a bag, and it's amazing how happy you can be with so little.
For sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
No, I miss the days when everything fit in the back of my car, for sure. And it'll probably never get that way again. But that's sort of my one. It's not necessarily a regret, but it's one of those things like, oh, it's sort of wistful. And, you know, when my kids say, oh, well, you know, I want to travel, I'm like, oh, just take the car. Just go. Just go.
okay.
Go explore the US, please. And that's something I think is also really important to keep in mind. Right now, we have this, you know, this opportunity, no matter where you are on the planet, to really open our eyes to experience where we are with the tourist's perspective. We often don't visit our own towns, our own spaces, until someone comes to visit, and then they want to see, you know, all of the tourist sites, or they want to see, you know, the things that are known of your area. And then we often don't take time to do that ourselves. And this is a really good opportunity right now to do those things and to just, you know, sort of appreciate what you have within the proximity without getting on a plane, and maybe not even getting in a car, or, you know, get on that bike that's been sitting in the shed and go bike around your neighborhood and appreciate what's growing, what's blooming. And all of these different little things, we sometimes only put that tourist lens on, that sort of fresh lens on, when we're traveling, when we're going someplace different. And we forget to do that just in what's in close proximity. And I really encourage people to do that. That's part of what this journey is for us in driving across the country. And I wanted my kids to come with me, and they were, you know, they're like, are you kidding? We've been in quarantine with you for 3 months. The last thing we want to do is get in a car with you and drive across the country. But okay, fair. That's fair. But they said, oh, but we do want to do a road trip at some point. So they may actually join us on our return trip from Colorado, just the last bit, because quite frankly, that's the best part. Going from Colorado to, where you go through the Rocky Mountains, and then you do, at least for me anyway, then you do Arches National Park, Monument Valley, Grand Canyon. I mean, that's where you really see the beauty of, the American Southwest. And it's a pretty phenomenal. But I think whether you have a Grand Canyon in your backyard, or for us here, we have Muir Woods, or, even if you're in San Francisco, it's like, when was the last time you went and saw the sights? Or where you are in Scotland, go enjoy something that's in your near proximity, walk through a field of heather and just, enjoy what's blooming. I think it's important to recognize the beauty that's around us and don't feel like you have to have that fresh lens by getting on a plane.
That's a really good point. And I have to ask, I know we're quickly running out of time here, but I have to ask, what do you tell someone who's getting pushback? What do you tell? Because I know my mom wasn't very excited when I told her that I'm going to go gallivanting around the world. And then you can imagine how she reacted when COVID situation started, and she wasn't very happy. But I reassured her umpteen times that I'm very, very safe and there's nothing to concern. And I do regular FaceTime calls every week, at least one FaceTime call. Always call your mom. But what do you tell that person who wants to explore? And I mean, you're kicking your kids out to say, go explore. But
yeah, and then I regret it. I'm like, come on. No, I was really fortunate, and that part of the reason that I got a travel bug is because my mother and my grandmother both were very much, not necessarily not the travel bug, but they both of my grandparents they were artists, and they traveled regularly on these artist retreats, and then they would come back with these incredible paintings. My grandfather had worked at IMD when it was originally started, IMED. He was a professor there. So he was one of the Harvard professors that came over and established IMED, which is a business school. It's one of the best business schools. At the time, it was initially in Italy, and then they moved it up to where it resides now in Lausanne. And that was during my mother's high school years. So she went to boarding school in Switzerland while my grandparents were living over there. So she had that abroad experience that really, formed her as a young adult, and really, helped her appreciate other, sort of other countries and other cultures and other worlds. And my grandmother had even gone over when she was around 18 and studied art and had lived with a family in Munich. Unfortunately, the war happened, so she was sent home. So she was there in 39, I believe. But it's fascinating looking at her journals talking about that time. So because they had such an appreciation for it, they had always encouraged us to go and experience the world. They didn't necessarily say leave and go live over there, but they were, always encouraged us. And no matter where I lived in the world, whether it was living in Colorado or whether it was living in, Brussels or in France, my mother always said, it doesn't matter where you live in the world, as long as it's a nice place to visit. So I think that's sort of my sort of baseline reality, is that for me, I want my kids to go and explore and enjoy, and as long as there's a place for me to come visit, and so that I can share the experience with them. And I'm not saying I'm going to go camp out with them. I want them to have the freedom and the independence. But I think if you can help them understand that it's not you're going away from them, you're going towards yourself and trying to really become a better self, and you want to share that with them. So it's not, I'm going away from you, come join me. And even friends that say, oh, you're leaving me. It's like, well, come visit. I've got this great place. I want to share it with you. And so when you make it an inclusive experience, then it's less about me going away. It's more about me sort of coming into myself and finding my way, and inviting you in.
I love that, and I'm going to use it. I'm gonna use that one. I know we're running out of time here. I got two more questions that I would love
Sure.
to get to. So we live in very strange times, and we've witnessed firsthand in recent days that heroes come in many shapes and sizes. Lately, it's been doctors and nurses and cleaning staff and frontline first responders. Who would you like to be a hero to? Who, if you're that person who's watching this video right now and is struggling, who is that person that's struggling? Who would you like to be a hero to help encourage them to that next level?
I would say, I really feel for these kids that are graduating right now. Um, and because I think they don't know what they're coming into. And I would encourage them to really embrace this opportunity for change, because um, we're in a major global reset, and things were pretty messy before. And yes, it feels like they're messy now, but the world was not in a very good place when this all started happening. Both from a political perspective, from an environmental perspective, there was a lot of destruction happening, and a lot of, really, I hate to use the word negative vibe, but like everything was really kind of destructive and negative. And this is really an opportunity for us to experience the world as it goes through its chrysalis, to come out the other side. And I would encourage them to get engaged in whatever thing they feel passionate about, because they can influence the future so much more than any of us can. We're here to support them and to be mentors for them. And I would encourage them to reach out to anybody that they feel is doing something exciting or interesting that they might be able to learn something from, because we all want to help you, to move to a better place. And whether that's, you want to be a digital nomad, or you want to have an impact on the world, or you just want to, figure out where you're going to go to college. And, you have all these great opportunities ahead of you, and it may not be what you had planned. It may not be what you had perceived your future was going to be, but I'm pretty darn sure it's going to be better. And you can be part of that. You can be part of the influence of making that a better thing, and reach out to people like me or to anybody. And usually they won't say no. And if they do say no, go on to the next person. Don't take that as a rejection. Just take it as they're probably busy, or they're probably struggling with their own transformation. But people from my generation and older love the opportunity to be mentors. And I would say reach out to those people and take the time to hear what they have to say, so that you can integrate that into creating a better future.
Fantastic. Thank you. So for anyone who would like to contact you, Heidi, or learn more about you, I'll make sure to include all the relevant links in the description below, but where would you prefer people to reach out to?
I would say To Balance You is my company page, but it sort of has a direction to me as a consultant, to my podcasts, to everything. There's links there. There's information about my books if you're interested in that, or the research. But I think that's probably the easiest place, and that's the number 2 balance letter u.com. So 2balanceu.com is the easiest place to find me. And also, I love my podcasts more because it's such a great opportunity. I reach out to the people that I want to learn from. And so if you're curious about becoming a global nomad or integrating a digital nomad lifestyle, I would recommend listening to some of those episodes, because I'm trying to learn more too. And so I'm bringing in anybody that I think can add value to our community, because I think there's a lot to learn.
Agreed. Thank you so much for joining us on Digital Nomad Journey, Heidi. I really can't thank you enough. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.
Make sure you get Heidi's book and listen to her podcast. I'm a listener myself and very much enjoy her content. And again, I'll have all the links below. So thank you for watching. And if you are all the way here at the very end of the YouTube video, I congratulate you, because you are not watching cat videos. You are trying to learn how to become a better version of yourself. So maybe check out these YouTube videos right here, since the algorithm is clearly pointing out that you might be interested in those as well. So own the day and make it yours. Take care.